Melkor's Most Hated. Hello, and welcome back to another video from Secrets of the Rings, where we celebrate and delve deep into all things Tolkien. Join us today as we look once more at Arda's greatest villain, Morgoth. He may have struck fear into the hearts of elves, men, and Valar alike, but what did he himself fear most? Whom did he hate, and what drove his desire for corruption? How did he display his wickedness and contend with his adversaries in the world? If you enjoy our videos, please like and subscribe for more content, and let us know what you would like to see more of. It is safe to say that Morgoth did not really have love for any things or beings in the universe, save himself, so any character of his time can fit onto this list. Additionally, to examine what Morgoth hates is very similar to an overall examination of the early phases of the legendarium. Learning about the Dark Tyrant is always a great opportunity to look once more at the forging of Arda and the foundational stories and conflicts that shaped Tolkien's universe forever. Morgoth, originally known as Melkor, or He Who Arises in Might, was the most powerful and magnificent of the Valar, the angelic powers of the world, but his rank in might was matched with strong curiosity and defiant behaviors. His resentment grew early and quickly, spending time in the void, away from Eru and the Ainur in search of the flame imperishable, where he could ponder on thoughts of his own. He sought to create beings under his dominion, not knowing the secret fire resides with Ilúvatar. Melkor disapproved of the emptiness of the void, and his bitterness grew henceforth. Melkor would seek to corrupt all things, beginning with his dissonant instrumentation in the music of the Ainur. Seeking to stand out above the rest, he went against the flow of the music, attracting other spirits to his cause. When Eru declared that all of Melkor's efforts would only serve his final vision, Melkor was filled with shame. Thus, he resents Eru and despises life itself, because he did not have the means to create it. As Tolkien wrote in the Valaquenta, he began with the desire of light, but when he could not possess it for himself alone, he descended through fire and wrath into a great burning, down into darkness. The Silmarillion, Valaquenta, page 31, Tolkien. The other Valar, Manwë in particular, were more in tune with Eru and sought to enact his will on Arda, which made them targets of Melkor's malice at a fundamental level. They would prove to be his direct adversaries for the early stages of the world. Despite his majesty, Melkor is cowardly and insecure, and no greater figure than Varda, the Lady of the Stars, puts that on display as his most feared foe of the Ainur, controlling the light he lusted for. He was envious of the beauty, power, and respect that Varda commanded among the Valar. Her qualities and influence contrasted sharply with his own dark and malevolent nature. She would reject him early on, before the making of the music, seeing the darkness of his mind, and would eventually choose to side with his brother, Manwë, during the establishment of Arda. Varda is also responsible for casting the Valakirka, the sickle of the Valar, set in the northern sky, as a challenge to Melkor later on. Manwë is certainly on Melkor's list of main adversaries, and he would keep watch from his throne on Taniquetil in Aman, receiving news from the great eagles and restricting Melkor's physical presence outside of Utumno. The mighty couple, king and queen of the Valar, would lead the other spirits against Melkor. Initially, upon the entering of Arda, the Valar battled for dominion of the world in the First War, where Melkor destroyed all that the others created. Upon hearing of his mischief, Tulkas, the Valiant, would become the last Valar to leave Ea and join the conflict. Being the strongest in combat, Melkor fled at the sound of Tulkas's laughter, beyond the walls of night that bordered the earth. He was the greatest physical threat that Melkor would face, and his presence gave the Valar enough freedom to usher in the spring of Arda, an age of peace that saw flourishing beauty and life, as well as the creation of the two lamps. But after the Valar gathered for the wedding of Tulkas to Nessa, the dancer, Melkor seized his opportunity for revenge, descending back into Arda and forging his first great fortress of Utumno in the north. While Tulkas slept, Melkor also destroyed the two lamps, plunging the world into darkness, save the light of the stars thanks to Varda. The spring of Arda was officially marred, and in the efforts to contain the damage done, Melkor retreated to his stronghold. The Valar eventually fled west to the continent of Aman. Yavanna created the two trees of Valinor to illuminate the west, but Melkor had essentially laid claim to the newly forged continent of Middle-earth, where the light of the trees did not reach. It was also Tulkas who later on captures and binds Melkor in the Angainor, a mighty chain that Aule forged with the intention of binding the Dark Lord and curbing his destructive and malevolent activities. These were some of the ways in which Melkor's despising of life and the other Valar would manifest in the physical realm. The other Valar was seen as beneath him. Their objectives were in direct conflict. Varda was the light, Manwe was Eru's greatest servant, and Ulmo, Yavanna, and Orome would not forsake Middle-earth. The Valar were concerned for the fate of the coming children of Ilúvatar. Yavanna's blessing of plants and animals, or Omar and Kelvar, were corrupted by the wicked winds that seeped from the north. Melkor used her creations as subjects of his will or destroyed them altogether. His hatred could be felt, too, in the reforging of the earth, the matter of which Yavanna's husband, Aule, was master. The shape of the world changed much in the earliest battles. Aule, similar to Might, to Manwe, and Ulmo, was also a major influence on the Noldor, who loved and learned from him the crafting of beautiful things. Melkor was jealous of him, for Aule was most like him in thought and in powers, and there was long strife between them, in which Melkor ever marred or undid the works of Aule, and Aule grew weary in repairing the tumults and disorders of Melkor. The Silmarillion, Valaquenta, page 27, Tolkien. Ulmo was the god of the sea, which Melkor had no influence over. Ulmo's domain of water was far too terrible and widespread for even the mightiest Valar to control. Melkor even sought to recruit Osse to his side, the Maiar under Ulmo, but to no avail. Ulmo was also quick to judge Melkor harshly at any given chance, resenting his release from the halls of Mandos in the west of Aman. They would remain at odds throughout the first age of Arda. Mandos is an honorable mention for this list. Although not overtly expressed in Tolkien's writing, it can be assumed based on Melkor's fear of death and the amount of time he spent imprisoned in the halls of Mandos, about 3 full ages. However, Mandos is relatively uninvolved in specific conflicts that take place in Middle-earth. In addition to Tulkas and Ulmo, Orome was another Valar whose strength and presence were a threat for Melkor, specifically in Middle-earth. Before the awakening of the elves, he battled with Melkor and was last to depart to Valinor. It is mentioned that when Melkor was spreading darkness and discord across Arda, Orome pursued him and engaged him in battle. Orome's hunt for Melkor revealed some of the dark and twisted things that Melkor had done in his quest for power and domination, thus supporting the counter-efforts against him and the eventual battle of the powers, otherwise referred to as the War for the Sake of the Elves. Ulmo and Orome were figures that always supported the children of Ilúvatar, gracing the elves early on after their awakening at Cuivienen. It was the sounds of water falling over rock that would introduce the elves to the world, along with the light of the stars, and it was Orome who first discovered them and brought them west to Aman, despite Melkor's attempts to scare the elves away from the Valar. Naturally, Melkor's hate extends far beyond the Valar and their creations. Elves were beautiful and graceful beings, standing for all that he despised. With the coming of the elves came their corruption into orcs and new rivalries, mostly with the House of Finwë or the Noldor. After Melkor's false pleas of forgiveness and release from his imprisonment in the halls of Mandos, he was limited to dwell in the city of Vamar. During this time, he would create rumors and lies amongst the elves in Valinor to create mistrust between them and the Valar. The Noldor were most curious and receptive to his influence. None became more of a force for chaos than Finwë's eldest son Feanor. He was the mightiest of the elves and extremely gifted in skills of craft. He created many gems, none more impressive or important than the Silmarils, created to capture the light of the two trees. Melkor harbored an intense lust for these special jewels, and would stop at nothing to possess them. He falsely convinced Feanor through rumors that his younger half-brother, Fingolfin, sought the title of High King of the Noldor when the time would come, creating strife within the family. Feanor hated Melkor, but was not aware it was him generating such lies. Melkor spread the desire for ruling new lands amongst all of the Noldor, thus changing the fate of Arda forever. Before his escape south, Melkor travelled to Formenos and preyed on Feanor's distrust of the Valar. He sought his alliance, but the great elf cursed Melkor when he realized his true intentions and longing for the Silmarils. The Dark Lord went south to Avathar to recruit an ancient and powerful evil known as Ungoliant, who wears the form of a giant spider. Melkor and Ungoliant worked together to destroy the two trees while the Valar and elves gathered, fleeing Aman to the north and draining the wells of Varda in the process. During the escape, however, the two villains would clash over the jewels they stole from Feanor, including the Silmarils. After devouring all of the treasures, Ungoliant demanded the Silmarils, from which Melkor was unwilling to part. Thus, Ungoliant nearly killed Melkor in her webs before he was rescued by his Balrogs, the evil spirits corrupted early on by the tyrant. The most power-hungry and jealous being in existence had met his match. One can argue that Feanor was Melkor's greatest enemy, however. Melkor would also kill his father, Finwë, before fleeing. Feanor then renamed the primordial spirit as Morgoth, the Black Foe, or Dark Tyrant, from which he would thenceforth be known. The new High King of the Noldor declared his quest for revenge and the return of the Silmarils, then decorating the Iron Crown of Morgoth against the wishes of the Valar, leading to the first kinslaying at Alqualonde. The oath of Feanor would become the doom of the Noldor, as declared by Mandos. Their oath shall drive them, and yet betray them, and ever snatch away the very treasures that they have sworn to pursue. To evil end shall all things turn that they begin well, and by treason of kin unto kin, and the fear of treason, shall this come to pass. The dispossessed shall they be forever. The Silmarillion, Quenta Silmarillion of the Flight of the Noldor, page 88, Tolkien. Feanor and his sons landed in Middle-earth in Year of the Trees 1497, engaging in what became known as the Dagor Nuin-Gileath, or the Battle Under the Stars, as the moon had not yet risen. Morgoth did not take part in any fighting, but his trusted lieutenant and lord of the Balrogs, Gothmog, would lead a counterattack that led to his killing of Feanor and the capture of his son, Maedhros. Morgoth would suspend Maedhros by one arm on the cliff of Thangorodrim as punishment and intimidation after he tricked the elf into a meeting for surrender. The rivalry with the Noldor would define much of the First Age. After the tragedy of the Dagor Nuin-Gileath, the attacks on Morgoth were devised largely by Fingolfin, the new High King of the Noldor, thanks to Maedhros' yielding of the mantle. He was joined by his sons, as well as the sons of his brother Finarfin, Finrod Felagund, Orodreth, Angrod, and Eagnor. Morgoth and the elves hosted some of the most epic battles in Tolkien's legendarium. Morgoth rarely showed himself, however, save for one challenge in First Age 455 by the mighty Fingolfin. The Dagor Bragolach, or the Battle of Sudden Flame, saw many deaths of many Noldorine warriors, and the loss of northern lands to Morgoth after he broke the long siege of Angband. Driven to a boiling point, the elven lord mounted his steed and charged the gates of Angband, calling forth the craven Dark Lord to face off in single combat. Frightened for his life, Morgoth was hesitant to accept, but he also feared the judgment of his minions. He accepted the challenge and faced off with the High King for many blows. Fingolfin would humiliate Morgoth with several slashes against him, but would eventually lose the fight. In Morgoth's final blow, Fingolfin drove his sword into the tyrant's foot, leading to a massive injury that caused him to limp forever after. Additionally, Morgoth's face was marred by the claws of Thorondor, the great eagle that rescued the body of the king for proper burial, as opposed to it being eaten by Morgoth's wolves. This new limp and facial scar he wore with shame. He would not depart his fortress again until after the War of Wrath at the end of the First Age. Morgoth's hatred for the race of men, the Second-born, is demonstrated in certain rivalries as well. One of the most celebrated stories in Tolkien's writings is that of Beren and Luthien. Beren, son of Barahir, had a bounty on his head from Morgoth due to his continued efforts to thwart him. In First Age 465, he set out to win approval for Luthien's hand in marriage from her father, Thingol, formerly known as Elwë. In order to do so, he was tasked with retrieving a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. Luthien, whose unmatched beauty and magical prowess stood for everything Morgoth rejected, would not allow Beren to complete this quest alone, and the two of them began the quest for the Silmaril that would see the defeat of Sauron and the cleansing and destruction of Tol in Gaurhoth, once known as the original Minas Tirith. Morgoth does lose a single Silmaril to them, and almost another after Luthien lures him and his underlings to sleep with song. Beren and Luthien's actions represented a bold defiance of Morgoth's authority. They demonstrated that even the most powerful being in Middle-earth could be challenged by the determination, courage, and love of mortal and elven heroes. This defiance was a symbol of hope for all those who opposed Morgoth's tyranny. Morgoth's capture of Hurin Thalion, the last lord of Dor Lomin, was a vital turning point in the Wars of Beleriand. In the Nirneth Arnoediad, or Battle of Unnumbered Tears, in First Age 472, the Noldor, along with the armies of men, suffered a major defeat. Many great men died protecting the retreat of Hurin's friend Turgon, the king of the hidden city of Gondolin and last male heir of Finwë. Upon his capture, Hurin was tortured in attempts to reveal the location of Gondolin. He would not break, and his strength of will led Morgoth to curse him and all of his kin, chaining him to a chair on the hills of Thangorodrim. There he sat for 28 years, watching the doom befall his children, Turin Turambar and Nienor Niniel, as well as those they encountered. But upon all whom you love my thought shall weigh as a cloud of doom, and it shall bring them down into darkness and despair. Wherever they go, evil shall arise. Whenever they speak, their words shall bring ill counsel. Whatsoever they do shall turn against them. They shall die without hope, cursing both life and death. The children of Hurin, the words of Hurin and Morgoth. Even after being set free, Hurin's actions continued to bring about death and destruction in Doriath and the fall of Gondolin, where Turgon was slain by Gothmog. Morgoth was closing in on control over all of Middle-earth. The descendants of Beren and Luthien, most notably their great-grandson Eärendil, son of Tuor and Idril Celebrindal, played a crucial role in the events of the War of Wrath, which marked the final downfall of Morgoth. Eärendil's voyage to Valinor led to the intervention of the Valar and the eventual defeat of Morgoth. With a Silmaril on his brow, he would sail the skies upon his ship, Vingilote, blessed by the Valar, and slay the massive and terrible winged dragon, Ancalagon the Black, during the concluding war of the First Age. Morgoth's final efforts were spoiled, and forever after, Eärendil would keep watch for the Dark Tyrant's return. In some of Tolkien's writings, it is suggested that at the end of the world, the Dagor Dagorath will take place, the last battle. Several themes revolve around Morgoth's character, most notably his feelings of jealousy, bitterness, and revenge. He is the spirit of rage within us all, and a fantastical example of the result of brooding on such feelings. Yet he is a magnificent being and character, and is always fun to read about as a major agent of change in Tolkien's universe. What do you think? Who has the most interesting story intertwined with Morgoth? Could any of these beings come out on top in single combat? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks again for joining us in another exploration of Tolkien's legendarium, and stay tuned for more fascinating videos. Be sure to like and subscribe and give us a follow on Instagram at Secrets of the Rings. Until next time, Namarie.